Welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Jacob Lilly here, and we're going to be discussing our theme for October, which is again exercise programming. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. I want to take some time and talk about a few different things that we can do to make our exercise more effective. So the best way to make our exercises more effective, whether it is running, whether it's cycling, weightlifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, any sort of modality that has to do with training and progressive overload and getting into that general adaptation syndrome. We talked a little bit about that in the last two videos for this month. We're going to talk about specific things that you can control, specific variables that you can kind of tinker with that are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more intermediate in your knowledge to help sustain that progress. So right away, let's start with number one, which is time under tension. So time under tension is a form of training that utilizes the same exact exercises. This one applies more so to weightlifting or any type of resistance training. If you think about a bicep curl, there's three actions that occurs, right? So let's say you're starting with your arms straight in front of you like this. You curl up, that's the concentric action. You're gonna go through a brief isometric action, which is an increase in tension without any length change to the muscle. And then you're gonna go down into the eccentric portion of the lift, right? Almost every, if not every lift that we have, it typically has these three parts to the movement. There's the concentric, the isometric, and the eccentric function of the exercise or particular movement that we're doing. So time under tension specifically applies to this. The more time under tension that we can apply to the muscle, the more stress we're going to be placing upon the muscle, the more energy intense it's going to take for the muscle to work. You're putting more time of work on the actual muscle itself. So if you do, let's say 10 bicep curls and you're kind of just going right through it, that might be a total work time of about 20 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, something very quick. And then let's say you take your rest period, which is about 60 seconds, right? A minute of rest. That's pretty standard. And then you do your third, fourth, fifth, sixth sets, however many sets that you're doing. However, this time under tension model and what you can change about it to make it more challenging is slow down the movement. Or if you're going up in the concentric portion of the movement for, let's say, 1 second or even like half a second, it's a fast moving movement. Time under tension will allow you to do that motion a little bit slower, get more of a contractile feel to it, hold it at the isometric part, and then slowly release and hold that eccentric motion down and have it more controlled, right? So by doing this, we're actually increasing the time under tension, and that's essentially putting more stress on the muscle. There's a few ways you can actually integrate this into your training program. You can do your first, let's say you're doing 4 sets of an exercise. You can do the first 3 sets completely normal, rep out as much weight as you can or what you've been doing. And then on that last set, that 4th set, you're going to slow it down and increase that time under tension. That's just one strategy that you can employ, or you can just do that across the whole workout. I will say though, when it comes to programming, if you're gonna add more time under tension throughout all of your lifts, you might actually need to decrease the amount of reps and sets that you do. The reason being is now we're talking about the total workload in terms of how much time those muscles are under tension, and have to compare that to what our normal routine would look like. Like I said, if you're doing 4 sets of bicep curls and it takes you 15 seconds to complete 1 set, that's 15 times 4, that's only a minute of work. Now, if you change that and you increase the time under tension and you make it a little bit slower, and now each set takes you 30 seconds to complete, that's 30 times 4 sets, that's 2 minutes of work. So now you essentially doubled the amount of effort and time under tension and time under load your muscles have to try to adapt to. You're essentially doubling the load. So you just have to kind of be careful with that. I wouldn't recommend just doing a whole workout as you normally would and just increasing the time under tension. Actually just do like maybe 1 or 2 sets and see how that works for you. And you might find out that you're actually a lot more sore. You might feel the muscles activate and engage a little bit more. So that's definitely something that you could look into. Next on our list is actually something that's a little bit more subjective. So this is something that you, as the person who's undergoing the exercise, is going to need to kind of figure out. This term is called the rate of perceived exertion, also known as RPE. So I use this as a subjective tool and a subjective measurement to give to my patients and my clients to say, okay, if you're doing an exercise, whatever that exercise is, how difficult do you think it is on a scale of 1 to 10? If, let's say, the RPE is a level 3, it's a 3 out of 10 in terms of intensity and difficulty, we want to maybe increase the intensity until that RPE is a little bit higher. The goal that I try to get to is most of your workouts, most of your exercises in terms of resistance training should roughly be around 5 to 7, maybe 8 on the RPE scale, right? That means that we're definitely getting some effort in. You're feeling the intensity, but you're really pushing it, but you're not pushing it too much where, you know, you're gonna be going for a record lift or something like that. You're not trying to break your own personal record. That would obviously be like a 9 or a 10 on the RPE. For the most part. This is a very subjective measurement, so it really depends on the person who's doing the exercise. If you're translating this into a cardio or endurance-based event or run or cycle or whatever, you want to still kind of have that self-evaluation. So for example, if I can run 30 minutes straight at a 10-minute pace and my heart rate's really low, I can breathe fairly well, and I don't really feel too exhausted or sore after the workout, my RPE might be like a 2 or a 3. However, it's a little bit different when it comes to endurance sports like that, because you want to have that lower threshold of effort if you're going to be doing these long, extensive runs. So this is when it's important to kind of understand the difference between resistance training and aerobic training or endurance training like that. If you watched my previous video, my marathon number 3 vlog, where I talk about sprint training, my intensity went up and my RPE, I would rate it at about an 8. I was running at a 6-minute pace, which is very uncomfortable for me, and I was doing that for 20-second intervals. So sprint for 20 seconds and rest for 45 seconds. But my rest period was just my normal run pace, which is about a 10-minute pace or so. So the intensity was pretty high, and thus my rate of perceived exertion was also very high. We already talked about other ways to make things more difficult in terms of resistance training, such as increasing your reps, your sets, and your weight. I'm not going to discuss that in this video. That's something we've already discussed, but just to kind of remind you guys, that is also another way that we can make things harder. That's probably the more obvious and kind of easy way to make things more challenging, is just keep doing the same thing that you're doing, just add more sets, add more reps, and or add more weight. That's very simple. The overall theme that I want to leave off with you guys, these are just some examples of things that we can do to make things more challenging and thus continue to make strides in our progress, whether it's running, you know, any endurance sport, lifting, resistance training, CrossFit, whatever it may be. The whole overall theme of this is just to make things harder. When it comes to this general adaptation syndrome, when it comes to this progressive overload model, we're going to have to make things harder constantly. Now, that's not to say that it has to be every single week. It can be on a month-to-month basis. This is why when you get into very advanced exercise programming, there's certain cycles that we prescribe to clients or patients, where we go on a micro, a meso, and a macro cycle, looking at the week-to-week, the day-to-day basis, then kind of expanding that view to a month-to-month basis, and then expanding a little bit further to a half-year to a yearly basis. And then we can make certain projections on how our trajectory should go, and if there's any changes, if there's any injuries, if there's any things that, hey, you feel better, you feel more recovered, we can modify these things week in and week out. And this is why it's very important to have a coach, to have someone that knows what they're doing in terms of that. But if you don't, this is again why I'm making these videos, so you guys can benefit from this information without having to spend tons and tons of money. However, I would recommend, if it's something you're very serious about, if it's something that you want to get into as, let's say, a sport, or if you're trying to get into max endurance running like marathons and ultra marathons, having a coach at least for a few months to kind of point you in the right direction and understand maybe some concepts you're not familiar with is going to be very, very important. Without further ado, the take-home message for this is, again, make things more challenging, make things more difficult, suffer now and you can prosper later on. That's another term that I like to say. So remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the video. Hopefully you like this one, you guys. Make sure to check out your local chiropractor. Other than that, take care. Have a great rest of your week, you guys.